Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the February 13th, 2024 Eugene Planning Commission meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. My name is Tiffany Edwards, and I am the chair of the Eugene Planning Commission. To begin this evening, I am going to read the city's land acknowledgement statement. Since time immemorial, the Kalapuya people have been the indigenous stewards to our region, building dynamic communities, maintaining balance with wildlife, and enacting sustainable land practices. This land acknowledgement is a way of resisting the erasure of indigenous histories and to honor Native communities by inviting truth and reconciliation. Following treaties between 1851 and 1855, Kalapuya people were dispossessed of their indigenous homeland by the United States government and forcibly removed to the Coast Reservation in Western Oregon. As we consider the impacts of colonization, we also acknowledge the strength and resiliency of displaced indigenous people. The city of Eugene is built within the traditional homelands known as the Kalapuya Ilahi. Kalapuya descendants are citizens of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes, I just lost it, I apologize. Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians, and they continue, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I lost my place. Okay, I apologize, you all. This was a bad idea. I thought I could push it in front of my screen and have to move it over here. I'm getting there. Sorry. Okay. Kalapuya descendants are citizens of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians of Oregon. They continue to make contributions in our communities here and across the lands. We express our respect for the inherent political sovereignty of all federally recognized tribal nations and indigenous people who live in the state of Oregon and across the nation. Therefore, the Planning Commission recognizes that what we do today will affect the many generations who come after us. Sorry, trying to manage multiple screens here. Thank you to everyone joining us in this virtual meeting format. Today, the topic of our meeting is the Community Engagement Plan for the Urban Growth Strategies Project. Anyone wishing to join the meeting online can do so by following the instructions listed on the agenda for this meeting. Planning Commission meetings can also be viewed by watching the live stream available on our website or the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21. For our first agenda item, I'd like to turn it over to Terry to begin the staff presentation. Following the staff presentation, the Commission will have the opportunity to ask questions, provide feedback, and possibly take action to approve the plan. I'm going to send it over to Terry. Thank you. Thanks for your patience, everybody. Sorry about my technical difficulties tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner Edwards. And before we start sharing screen, I'm going to do a few introductions, and then we'll start sharing screen and do the presentation. So again, I'm Terry Harding. I'm the Principal Planner for Community Planning and Design with the City of Eugene. I'm joined tonight by Stuart Warren, also on the Community Planning and Design team, and Leah Rausch. We'll be giving the presentation. Mostly Stuart and Leah will be giving the presentation. We also have Rebecca Gershow here to answer questions and help out as needed. And also Fabio Andrade from the Office of Equity and Community Engagement is here to assist in any way that he can. So thank you all for being here. Just to frame your discussion this evening, a community engagement plan is a tool that we in the Planning Division use to help run and collect community input and influence the outcomes of our planning projects. We particularly use them on legislative projects, so long-range planning projects, not individual land use applications. And a lot of them are guided by state mandates. So you may recall the recent community engagement plan for the Middle Housing Project, and the one we'll be discussing tonight is similar to that in that it is implementing a wide range of state mandated work as well as locally directed policy work. There are also some recent major projects that have been completed that are leading into this new suite of work, and those include urban reserves, Cities Growth Monitoring Program, and the Climate Action Plan 2.0. So in just a moment, we're going to provide the Planning Commission with an overview of the draft community engagement plan for the Urban Growth Strategies project, included as attachment A in your packet. In your role serving as the city's committee for citizen involvement, we are looking for the Planning Commission to provide feedback on and to approve or approve with modifications the community engagement plan during this meeting. I'd like to turn it over to Leah.
Awesome. Thank you, Terry. I will go ahead and start sharing our presentation. As Terry said, my name is Leah Rausch. I am an associate planner on the community planning and design team. So good evening, commissioners. Thanks for having us. I'm going to give a little bit of project background here, and then I'll hand it over to Stuart to go through the plan with you all a little bit later on. You know, as we've discussed and as Terry kind of forecasted, this is a coordinated project that's inclusive of our state required urban growth planning work, equitable community engagement, as well as city council directed policy priorities. So I'll give some background on the project, which as you'll see is kind of ever evolving as we continue our work and engagement planning. And then I'll hand it off to Stuart to actually walk you through the draft engagement plan. As Terry said, we'll be looking for your thoughts, feedback, and questions on the plan itself. Urban Growth Strategies, this umbrella project, will identify the tools, actions, policies, and land needed for the next 20 years to support living wage jobs and housing that everyone can afford. It builds off the Envision Eugene community vision by evaluating the need for housing, jobs, parks, infrastructure, and schools, as well as what tools we have in Eugene to grow more efficiently. This work will result in studies of what land is actually available in Eugene, updates to our Envision Eugene comprehensive plan, and other adopted city plans and land use regulations. We'll have a parcel-specific land use designation map and an evaluation of whether there is a need to expand the urban growth boundary or the UGB. So in this project background, I'll talk a little bit about the goals of the project, our projected timeline, and then some of the state and local work that's actually driving urban growth strategies. So we've established 6 goals for the project that reflect the amount of work that we're taking on over the next few years and how wide-ranging and impactful we expect this work to be. Our goals include to advance Eugene's vision for a community where people at a variety of income levels can afford to live, work, shop, and play, to facilitate the production of more housing and move Eugene towards more fair and equitable housing outcomes, to support data-informed policy decisions about urban area growth, including when to expand the urban growth boundary, to provide meaningful opportunities for community members to inform policies, tools, and actions to plan for growth, to center the voices and experiences of historically marginalized community groups in decision-making, and finally, to comply with relevant state statutes and administrative rules, including the Oregon Housing Needs Analysis, or the ONA, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a couple slides. We've broken the project into 5 phases. Stuart will talk more about the first phase of actually the plan development a little later on, so I'm going to focus on the others. Our first phase is to identify and document our community's needs and priorities for housing. A couple ways we'll do that. The Housing Production Strategy, or the HPS, is a state-required document that summarizes and prioritizes tools and actions to address housing needs and increase housing production, affordability, and choice. After adoption in 2026, the HPS will be our 8-year work plan, so 2027 to 2035, of how the city will meaningfully work to address our local housing crisis. The HPS can include a wide variety or wide range of actions, including things like zoning and code changes, investments in affordable housing, reducing regulatory barriers to housing production, or otherwise protecting vulnerable community members from housing displacement. In the shorter term, we'll identify a handful of tools that we want to adopt right away, or tools that we've adopted in recent years but haven't yet accounted for. So these will These are what are called our land use efficiency measures, and they're tools that use residential and employment lands more efficiently, so allowing or encouraging more housing and jobs on land than was previously expected. These could include things like upzoning or rezoning or adopting different incentive programs. We know that we'll be using climate-friendly areas designation, middle housing, and likely the ongoing work to encourage more housing in our downtown core as some of our housing efficiency measures. We'll also look at employment efficiency measures as we need them. And to inform the efficiency measures, we'll be working on a redevelopment analysis this year, which will look at specific study areas to estimate their redevelopment potential and incentives for mixed-use development. Our next phase is focused on understanding our land needs for different urban uses. So that's jobs, housing, parks, schools, and infrastructure. We understand our land needs. To understand our land needs, we need to assess both supply and demand. So on the supply side is our buildable lands inventory, or BLI, which is an inventory of Eugene's existing land supply for housing, employment, parks, and other public needs. The BLI identifies vacant or underdeveloped lots and their capacity for future development. On the demand side, we have a couple of different analyses. So we have our housing capacity analysis, which looks at the current and future demand of housing across a range of prices, rent levels, locations, housing types, and densities. And our economic opportunities analysis, which looks at Eugene's economic trends, economic development potential, forecasted employment growth, and needs for future economic growth. The proposed timeline for the technical analysis doesn't incorporate any analysis that we would need to do for an urban growth boundary expansion, which I'll touch more on in a moment. So all of this kind of strategic housing planning and technical analysis will result in policy outcomes, which will move forward in kind of three different buckets. First, we see value in taking this project as an opportunity to continue the development and adoption of a Eugene-specific comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan implements the vision that's outlined in Envision Eugene and should be supported by contemporary community input. Policy updates will include new chapters on housing, compact development, community engagement, and community health. Concurrently, staff is working to modernize the land use designation map and adopt it within Eugene's comprehensive plan. This parcel-specific map will clarify and define land use designations and policies for land within Eugene's urban growth boundary. Finally, other policy changes will likely be necessary to implement the outcomes of community engagement and technical analysis, including amendments to the Eugene Land Use Code, the Metro Plan, and other plans as needed. As you've likely noticed in the timeline, all of this work is lining up for concurrent adoption in 2026. Some of this work is mandated to be adopted by then, so it made sense to align the whole suite of work. We expect that the adoption package will look very similar to the city's work in 2017 to adopt parts of the Eugene Comprehensive Plan and land supply studies. First, it will include an updated residential land supply study, which establishes a 20-year supply of land for residential use within our urban growth boundary. It incorporates data and technical analysis from the housing capacity analysis, looking at our other urban land needs on residential land, our residential buildable lands inventory, and our residential efficiency measures. We'll also have an updated employment land supply study, which establishes a 20-year supply of land for non-residential uses within our urban growth boundary and includes data and technical analysis from our economic opportunities analysis, looking at our other urban land needs on employment lands, our employment buildable lands inventory, and our employment efficiency measures. Additionally, we'll have comprehensive plan amendments, including the new chapters, revisions to existing chapters as needed, and the land use designation map. The completed land supply studies are appendices to the comprehensive plan. And as I mentioned, we expect we'll need to make some adjustments to the code and to the Metro Plan to reflect and formally adopt some of the pieces of this work. We expect the housing production strategy to be adopted concurrently, but as a standalone document. Ultimately, all this work results in an evaluation of whether Eugene's UGB needs to be expanded to meet our land needs over the next 20 years. The evaluation will consider the findings from our technical analysis to understand and quantify our land needs, as well as the expected impacts of land use efficiency measures to meet those needs within our current urban growth boundary. If we find that we do need to expand, that will become a new and additional process that includes an evaluation of where we'll expand and for what uses. We expect that work to take up to another 3 years. A UGB expansion analysis would also include additional community engagement and build on the city's work to adopt urban reserves in 2022. As with all of our adoption processes, we'll convene several work sessions with the Planning Commission, a public hearing, and you'll be asked to make a recommendation to City Council, who will then go through their own process. We also expect that components of this work will be co-adopted with the county, requiring a concurrent process with their Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners. So we think it's important to ground this work in our other priorities and obligations as a planning team. Completing the Envision Eugene Comprehensive Plan has been a priority for several years since we completed the first chapters in 2017. Since then, the City Council approved the Housing Implementation Pipeline, or the HIP, which is a 5-year internal work plan to advance key housing priorities across city teams. The HIP articulates a pro-housing agenda and identifies several of the urban growth strategy's components as priority projects, including the comprehensive plan update, the land use designation map, and much of our housing planning work. And much of urban growth strategies is supported by the city's current strategic plan. The project will advance several urgent community needs as established by the City Council goal for sustainable and accountable development. All of this work ultimately is guided by the relevant state statutes and administrative rules that relate to Oregon's statewide land use planning program. But in addition, there are several recent state mandates that require Eugene to update our urban growth boundary and housing planning, including House Bill 2003 in 2019, which created the Regional Housing Needs Analysis and requires Eugene to update our housing capacity analysis and housing production strategy every 8 years. In the 2023 legislative session, House Bill 2001, also known as the Oregon Housing Needs Analysis, or ONA, directed the Department of Land Conservation and Development to develop and implement rules to increase housing production, affordability, and choice. 2 packages of rules, administrative rules, are coming up and will inform various components of urban growth strategies. And as you all have heard, in 2022, the state adopted rules establishing the Climate Friendly and Equitable Communities, or CFEC program. Urban growth strategies will include the designation of climate-friendly areas, which is a component of CFEC implementation, as one of several policies to encourage more efficient use of land in our current UGB. New policies in the Eugene Comprehensive Plan will also implement and comply with CFEC requirements. Also included in the CFEC rules and the ONA are some specific requirements about equity, both completing an engagement-focused equity analysis and achieving more fair and equitable outcomes in our housing planning work. The CFEC rules include a specific requirement to conduct an engagement-focused equity analysis. And through this analysis, the city will assess the benefits and the burdens of climate-friendly areas designation and policies based on the stories and lived experiences of historically marginalized community groups. While this analysis isn't required for the housing production strategy or our comprehensive plan updates, we anticipate that many of the benefits and burdens expressed by community members during that analysis will provide valuable insight for citywide strategies and tools. As we've discussed in the past, historically marginalized community groups are defined in the Oregon administrative rules, and centering the voices and experiences of these groups is a core value outlined in the City of Eugene's public participation guidelines, as well as the city's strategic plan. Fabio is in the audience today, and he can help us answer some specific questions around that if there are any. You may be wondering why it's important for us to center marginalized voices in this planning work and ultimately in decision making. There's a well-documented history of decades of discriminatory housing and land exclusion policies that have kept communities of color from opportunities to build generational wealth in housing and land ownership and access affordable and quality housing near schools, grocery stores, jobs, transportation, and clean air and water. These harmful policies from the past are still felt in Eugene today, including the historic exclusion of non-white people from Oregon, the displacement of the Fair Street Bridge or the Over the Bridge community, and the exclusionary roots of single-family zoning and restrictive covenants. In addition to the equity analysis, the state rules include requirements to advance fair and equitable outcomes through our housing planning work. Specifically, the HPS must summarize how the selected priority actions, in combination with other city actions, will achieve equitable outcomes related to the location of housing, fair housing and housing choice, housing options for residents experiencing homelessness, affordable home ownership and affordable rental housing, and gentrification, displacement, and housing stability. Stuart will talk more about how we're integrating the engagement-focused equity analysis and equitable outcomes requirements into our engagement plan. With that, I will hand it over to Stuart to talk about the plan itself.
Thank you, Leah, for that great project background. Good evening, commissioners. I'm going to provide you an overview of the Urban Growth Strategies Community Engagement Plan included as attachment A to your agenda item summary. After the overview, we have time for questions and feedback on the plan, and then we're going to ask for your direction. Next slide, please. First, I'd like to point out that the city is now calling our public involvement plan a community engagement plan. This is different than what you've seen in the past, and it is the result of consultation with the Office of Equity and Community Engagement. Staff believes that this change better reflects the intent of the plan and helps staff use more consistent language. Next slide. The purpose of the Community Engagement Plan is to guide how the city engages the Eugene community during the Urban Growth Strategies project. The plan outlines engagement goals, the appropriate level of involvement for community members based on their ability to impact project outcomes, and illustrates the principles that staff are committed to during engagement. The plan describes opportunities for people to engage in the different phases of the project. It details how different individuals and organizations could participate in the project and ways that they can stay informed, and clearly communicates the city's commitment to equity through community engagement. The plan outlines the engagement goals for the urban growth strategies. The goals are to inform the community using project materials that are accessible and easy to understand, and use balanced, objective information to aid in understanding opportunities and solutions. Proposed tools, actions, and policies from the project will be prioritized and refined based on public feedback and technical analysis. We'll use broad-reaching and targeted engagement. Both broad engagement is targeted to the community as a whole, whereas targeted engagement will involve working directly with expert stakeholders, people who are subject matter experts, have knowledge of the field, or have lived experience. Engagement will also target historically marginalized community groups to ensure that their feedback and concerns are understood and articulated alongside technical analysis. And the last goal is for the Planning Commission, City Council, and Board of County Commissioners to consider the outcomes of both the technical analysis and community engagement in their decision-making. The Community Engagement Plan also has a high-level timeline on page 4 and is replicated on the current slide. First, I want to highlight that the timeline that directly impacts this body. Staff is here today to ask for your approval to kick off engagement for Urban Growth Strategies Phase 1, or the Community Engagement Phase. We will return periodically to you to provide updates on the project throughout the spring and summer, then begin work sessions with you in the second half of the year on topics such as the first community engagement summary and housing needs and barriers. Starting in 2025, the Commission will have key decision points throughout the year. With your approval, staff is proposing that we start targeted engagement in the next month with activities like social engagements, working group meetings, interviews, and meetings with the Envision Eugene Technical Advisory Committee, or ETAC. Through meetings with community partners, social engagements, and interviews, staff will further refine how we implement this community engagement plan. Staff is then proposing to host area-based conversations about designating climate-friendly areas, or CFAs, starting late spring and early summer. At the same time, staff will host a citywide open house, and not pictured on this timeline is a citywide survey that will be released in the spring. In early 2025, staff will host another open house that will seek community-wide feedback on proposed tools, actions, and policies from the first round of engagement. Later in 2025, staff will host another round of social engagements and working group meetings that will be used to inform the community about the results of the technical analysis and policy development. In 2026, staff will create the adoption materials and ask for Planning Commission feedback and a recommendation to take to the City Council for their consideration. The Community Engagement Plan outlines a wide range of activities that staff is proposing to engage with the Eugene community. Page 7 of the plan has more details for each activity, but this slide shows the complete list of them. Because there are so many of them, I'm going to focus on social engagements, working groups, individual and small group interviews, and the Planning Commission's role. Planning Commission's role is to engage at key points in the project and to provide policy direction and ultimately make a recommendation to City Council. Social engagements will be held early in the process to recruit participants to future meetings and gather input. A second round of social engagements later in the project will be used to share findings and draft recommendations. These events will target youth and students and Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Working groups will meet throughout the course of the project to identify issues and evaluate policies related to housing and employment opportunities. A core group representing key stakeholders like developers, planners, and housing providers will connect through the course of the project and be augmented by individuals with specific knowledge based on the working group meeting topic. Staff have already begun organizing the events and currently has 29 people signed up to attend the first meeting in March. The last activity that I want to highlight are the individual and small group interviews. These interviews will augment engagement by reaching out to specific stakeholders who have not been represented in the engagement process. Through this activity, staff will meet people where they are and ask pointed questions about tools, actions, strategies, and policies. Interviews are an important part of engaging historically marginalized community group members in this project. The project team will use a variety of communication tools to share information about the project and provide updates about community engagement opportunities. Staff have created a main project web page for the Urban Growth Strategies, which has basic project information, upcoming events, meetings, and surveys, information about ways for the public to provide comments, and links to the Engage Eugene page. The webpage also has links to background documents, technical reports, community engagement summaries, and other project websites like the Envision Eugene Comprehensive Plan and Land Use Designation Map. Staff is also working to create a project webpage in Spanish that will have very similar information to the English version. The project team will create a public communications list for interested residents and will use it to circulate project information, invitation, surveys, and project outcomes. The project will post regular content on Eugene's planning, Facebook, and Instagram, and staff will use online resources like virtual open houses and webinars to help the community understand the context and purpose of project components. Lastly, the project management team will use printed materials to announce open houses and surveys in both English and Spanish, and use direct mailings to target residents and property owners who may be impacted by certain policy decisions or clarifications specifically related to the creation of the land use designation map. The Community Engagement Plan outlines how the project management team is interpreting state requirements for equitable engagement that Leah mentioned earlier in the presentation. Through targeted engagement, like social engagements and interviews, members of historically marginalized community groups will help influence equitable project outcomes like housing production by encouraging a vibrant housing market in Eugene that offers housing options, both existing and new, housing affordability by proposing tools, actions, strategies, and policies that work to stabilize housing cost, housing choice through the production of different types of housing with diverse characteristics and locations, access to community resources like stable housing, living wage jobs, walkable neighborhoods, participation in local decision-making, and daily services like groceries, pharmacies, parks, and more. And the project will work towards fair housing outcomes by minimizing the risk of housing displacement of people vulnerable to systematic racism and bias. And affirmatively furthering fair housing means that this project will take meaningful actions to overcome patterns of segregation and foster an inclusive community. The last equitable outcome that I want to mention is promoting living wage job opportunities and economic development. That will be part of this process. And we also have some really exciting news to share with you. As of yesterday, the Urban Growth Strategies Project was just notified that we'll receive additional funding to increase our equitable engagement beyond what was included in the community engagement plan. As soon as we know more information, we'll bring you all into the loop. At the end of the community engagement plan is a list of interested and impacted groups. Urban Growth Strategies will engage a broad spectrum of community members citywide. Examples of broad outreach activities are citywide surveys and open houses. The project will also conduct focused outreach to historically marginalized community groups and those significantly impacted by project outcomes. For example, climate-friendly area conversations will conduct focused outreach to impacted neighborhoods. Page 10 of the Community Engagement Plan outlines a list of interested and impacted groups. They range from community and faith-based organizations to neighborhood associations and housing developers. These interested and impacted groups will be invited to participate in the project, and the project management team expects for this list to grow throughout the project. Next steps include gathering feedback from the Planning Commission and approval of the Community Engagement Plan tonight. If approved, staff will host pre-engagement conversations with community partners to gather feedback. This feedback will help the project team tailor implementation of this plan to better fit the needs of the community. This step is a bit different than what staff has done before and is an important part of tailoring the plan to meet the needs of the community. Lastly, we plan on returning to the Planning Commission on May 15th. To help ensure that the project achieves the desired outcomes, staff is asking for the Planning Commission to consider what, if anything, is missing from the Community Engagement Plan, what would the Planning Commission like to see done differently, and does the Planning Commission have any suggestions about the best way to implement the community engagement activities in the plan? At this point, I'll turn the floor back over to Chair Edwards for Commission's feedback, questions, and discussion.
Okay, great. Thank you, Stuart. I see everybody now. Anybody want to go first? I have a couple comments if you want me to kick us off. Okay, I'll go first, and then if anybody raises hands, I'm watching. Thank you so much. This is really a great summary of everything, and I really appreciate the work of staff. You guys do an incredible job. One of the things that I think about with regards to engaging the community is, as I'm thinking about being part of it myself and wearing different hats, I think that there's a challenge out there that it's hard to get people to participate just because people are busy. And so there's that. But the second part of it is that I think that sometimes I hear anecdotally that people that participate in the city's processes to provide feedback end up not feeling heard when a different decision than what they have personally maybe weighed in on ends up being not what is recommended to council or whatnot. And so I think that what I'd like to see is really straightforward clarity about what is being asked of the public, so that there is no question about asking them how they feel about something, when at the end of the day there are mandates involved, and there's nothing we can do as a city. We really have to implement certain things. And so I think that the best, and I don't have thoughts or ideas, I'm just kind of putting it out there as a suggestion of trying to figure out the best way to lead people to a productive place, and so that they're giving feedback that's actually useful, rather than feedback that just says, well, we hate this and we don't like anything that you all are doing, and so just don't do it. So I'll kind of leave it at that and see if anyone else has anything extra to add, but I really think this is great work. So and I'll call on Commissioner Beeson.
Thank you. I also think it's great work. I think you guys do great work. I think this is really comprehensive and thorough. I have a couple of comments, but I guess I want to set it in some context that I really do think this is very thorough and comprehensive. It appears to me it's got, among other things, kind of enough flexibility. Maybe I would say that as we go along, I'm assuming we can all sort of, and you all can kind of learn and adjust as we go along with this process over time. It seems like there's just sort of a lot of parts and pieces to this that allow us to try to do what, accomplish the goals that we're setting out to engage the community. So I appreciate the material. I'm still kind of going through it. I want to make a quick comment. I found myself at times wanting to engage on the urban growth strategies project, I guess, and I kept kind of thinking about that, and I was making notes on it. And then I thought, well, the purpose of tonight is to talk about the engagement plan. So I'm going to try to stay focused on that. One of the things that occurs to me, I think what's really hard, I'm expecting what might be hard about this is, as you set up, you talked about all the different ways you're going to engage, the social engagements, the working groups, and so on. And I think there are people in the community who are going to be, really interested and are going to want to engage. And I think what kind of a real primary piece of work here that's really important is to engage with those people who are most impacted. And I know that you are totally aware of that. You've talked about it quite a bit in the plan, but I think that's really kind of the hardest part of all of this, is to really engage with the people who are most impacted. I found myself when I'm going through it, you have this footnote. I talked about it a bit or commented on it when we had the CFAC presentation on the historically marginalized community groups. And I really like that a lot, of everything that you've kind of documented in there. And I just want to, they're all very important. It's all really important. And what you're doing and how you're focusing. One that I kept thinking about while I was going through this stuff, though, was, and I don't know if I want to think of them, I guess, as a historically marginalized group. I kept thinking about renters. I even went back and I looked, I think it was our December presentation we had from Genevieve about the severely rental cost burdened community that we have, and like 34,000 renters out there. And we're one of I guess, a handful of communities in Oregon that has this situation. And I'm thinking, as part of all of this, reaching out and connecting with that whole community and hearing from them and learning from them. I think one of the things I thought I read into all the stuff we heard is that they're not really heard from that much. I think of them as being a bit marginalized. So maybe I'll kind of leave it at that. I guess I'd want to kind of call them out as something I think we ought to address in here. The other quick comment about this I want to make: when I think of social engagements, and I think of some of the things, I think of things that are sort of short-lived. And again, I'm trying to say everything you're doing here, I think, is good. It seems like when something goes on for a period of a couple of years and you're really trying to listen deeply, as you say, or you're trying to make these connections, and I don't have I guess, a real detailed recommendation here, but I think to the extent on some of the working groups that with some of the marginalized groups, you can establish working groups of kind of a longer duration. Maybe membership, people who are in it, who are willing to commit. I'm thinking back to Healthy Democracy that we did with middle housing, and I'm not thinking of anything necessarily, that involved. But anyway, I found myself just thinking it would be good if, to the extent you can, engage with some people over a period of time, help them understand what this is all about, give them a chance to kind of talk to their friends and neighbors and that whole thing, as opposed to maybe single interviews or so. But again, all those things are important. So those are a couple of quick comments. I'm going to kind of stop there. I've got a few other things in answer to your questions as we keep going, but I'll stop there for now. So thanks.
And anyone is welcome to respond before I call on Commissioner Isaacson. I know there's a lot there, but
Yeah, maybe just quickly I can respond, Commissioner Beeson. So your point about emphasizing renters is well taken. They're on that list of historically marginalized communities, but certainly, especially when we're talking about the housing planning components, a really important group for us to check in with. We're eagerly awaiting the results of the rental, what was it called? The renter experience survey that community development did. They're waiting through the initial results of that, and that's will give us some really great information on kind of housing needs for specifically for renters, but certainly wanting to prioritize them through our other engagement tactics as well. I'll also say, I think your point around that sustained engagement with historically marginalized groups or with a more representative group is well taken. We don't currently in this plan have kind of an equity panel model. That's, I think, what it's been named for some of the recent projects or a healthy democracy type model built into this plan right now. As Stuart said, we did recently here, we have some more resources to put towards that work, whether it be more translation, more of those like focus groups and interviews, getting into community through community-based organizations and actually through partnerships with nonprofits and other community groups, trying to kind of sustain that relationship building that kind of gets to what you're talking about. I don't know if Terry, you would add anything on the other models.
No, I think you did a great job. But since we're answering questions, I wondered if you had some information for Commissioner Edwards' questions and comments about focusing on helping people know how they can, what they can influence, basically.
Yeah, it's a great point, Commissioner Edwards, and something, a couple of resources that we lean on in developing this plan are one, the city's values for public participation. So there's a few in there specifically that focus on providing meaningful opportunities for engagement and providing kind of realistic opportunities for engagement. And so I think when we're looking at state mandated work, we want to be realistic about where the community has leverage and influence and where we're just implementing state mandates. I think this work, because it's so encompassing of so many different pieces of policies work that is really city directed and technical analysis that is more narrow in how we can kind of do that work. And there's a lot of rules around how we do it. We will really be trying to focus our engagement on those pieces that the community can kind of meaningfully involve and influence. The other tool that we lean on a lot is, and I think I've referenced to this group before, is the International Association's for public participation spectrum of public participation. So it basically says, how deep are you going to engage with people based on how much influence they can have over the outcomes, and what tactics kind of help you line up those two things. So that's kind of the framing that we use for the engagement goals that are included in the plan. And something we try and think a lot about is this a informing opportunity where we're really just saying, hey, community, this is happening. Here's how you can learn more, versus deeper engagement where we want to work really closely with folks to influence project outcomes all the way through to decision making. And I think your last point was around, people understanding what happened to what they told staff versus what gets ultimately decided on. And that is certainly something we need to commit to, is that transparency. We'll be developing a few public community engagement kind of summaries throughout the 3 years that summarize, here's what we heard, here's all the tactics, here's who we talked to, a summary of not just the big themes, but really more of the nuanced details that we heard from different groups and perspectives. And here's what we did with that information and feedback. And there's actually the housing production strategy has some very specific rules from the state of how we have to connect what we heard in engagement to our policy priorities and actions and actually like draw that connecting line between them. So again, something that we're required to do for a piece of it, but we can really apply to the project as a whole.
Great. Thanks, Leah. All right, I'm going to call on Commissioner Commissioner Isaacson. I see your hand. Go ahead.
Just because we're bald doesn't mean that it's just a low blow. Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I would agree both with Commissioner Edwards and Commissioner Beeson. I think that that for me, this is definitely moving in the right direction in terms of how we're engaging, and also how we're listening to change the process each time we have this come up. So we're not following the same prescriptive process. We were learning from it, which has been kind of my mantra since HB 2001. And how are we changing the method by which we're reaching out to folks so that we're learning? I think that one thing that would be really helpful for me is to address in some way, because I know your metrics are going to be it's not going to be simply a game for you in terms of how many physical people we talk to, but different events, different groups, different people, different areas of the city. But setting out what the goals are ahead of time, and allowing people to have some say into whether or not that's an efficient or effective goal that they're kind of setting the measuring stick at. Because I think part of the problem that we continually have when we get to the end of one of these scenarios is we will hear from people that we think as a body and as a staff that we've done an effective job at outreach, but the measuring stick isn't universally accepted. And so if we all agree on that, or at least we all know what the measuring stick is going into it, then at the end of it, we can say, look, we put this up here. We had a conversation about what the measuring stick was going to be. We had a conversation about what the metrics were going to be, and we achieved them. I think that adds a little bit, another layer of transparency onto it as well. The only other thing I was going to suggest is, larger apartment complexes within the city usually have community rooms. And in addition to doing the neighborhood association meetings, which are typically at night, so it's going to involve staff time after hours, having some sort of announcement or process at some of the larger apartment buildings where they're all collective renters, to be able to have that kind of feedback. I think that would be an interesting and new approach to this whole process. And I'll hand it back to you, Commissioner Edwards.
Great. Thanks, Commissioner Isaacson. I see Commissioner Frackle's hand up.
Great. Thank you. So yes, I will echo the other commissioners' feedback that I think this is a great plan. I think there's reasons why our staff have been recognized at the state level for previous engagement plans, and I think this looks like a great draft so far. A couple of areas that I was thinking about as you were discussing was I'm really glad you're reaching out to youth. I don't know how you define that. So maybe someone could just quickly tell me, how do you define youth?
Yeah, that's a good question, because we also include students in some of our kind of targeted groups, right? So those social engagements are really targeted at, I would say, like the 18 to 30, even like young adults and students. We're working with a few community collaborators who are University of Oregon undergraduate and graduate students who will really serve as liaisons to that community, help us shape engagement that is resonant and interesting to younger people and more diverse people, more racially diverse people, I should say, and really specifically that type of engagement, because they're often groups who aren't going to show up to a citywide open house that's hosted by the city directly or participate in a survey or some of our more like traditional methods. In addition to that, we are working with the city manager's office to look at the mayor's youth advisory council to try and work more closely with them, and that is high school age students.
Great. So there are other groups within our high schools, such as MECHA or student government or Black student associations. That would be a great access point. But I was hoping you would be contacting or engaging with the mayor's youth advisory group. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out that Lane Community College has a much more diverse population of students than the U of O does. And they actually are representative of many historically marginalized communities, plus individuals that have much lower socioeconomic status. So I would really hope we would prioritize engagement there as well. So I'm glad to hear that you're reaching out in that fashion. But I also think, I mean, I think of young adults as being under 30. And so, but reaching out to younger people in their 30s, or I think in particular, young families, young families who have children, right? These are community members that are, invested in how our community grows and develops and are raising their children here. So I would encourage you to use the city's school district or school districts as access points. And I really appreciated what Commissioner Isaacson said about having things during the day. Different people can come at different times. So, and then the other piece I was thinking about is, I feel like when I've looked at survey results in the past, there tends to be predominantly a certain age group that responds. And so that's why I was thinking about younger constituents. But also there tends to be participation more heavily focused in certain neighborhoods and regions of the city. And that's something we just, I think, need to be honest about. And so when you talk about having open houses that are even central downtown, I think you said one or two, but I mean, it sounds like there'll be other small engagement activities. I just think if we want to engage with people in parts of the city that have historically not had as much engagement or as much of a voice in these opportunities, we may need to have additional open houses or social engagements in those areas. And I think many of those areas tend to be west and north, and we know where the predominant participation tends to be. I really appreciate the effort to reach out to renters, but you mentioned people who have expertise, and I can't recall if I saw CETA listed as an organization of expertise in the draft. They are?
So it's a great question. We didn't list specific organizations. We listed kind of types of organizations and partners, but CETA is definitely on our list.
Okay, great. So that is, I agree with a lot of the things that have been expressed. I think you're on the right track, and it's a lot to manage, but I think it will be really productive to coordinate all of these efforts. So thank you for your work.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Fagla, for those comments. Points well taken. I just want to, I think, add to both your comments and Commissioner Isaacson's that one of our tactics that we didn't necessarily emphasize in the presentation today is this like community presentations and tabling. And to me, that really is going out into community working in different neighborhoods, going to special events, going to apartment complexes or affordable housing developments or schools or whatever that might look like, and actually setting up tabling and talking to people in those spaces that they're familiar with and comfortable with. That's something that gets scaled based on resources a little bit, but our intention is to do as much of that as we can. And to your point, really focus on the folks who are not going to show up to some of those more traditional kind of surveys and open houses. So that's one thing. And I really appreciate your comments around focusing on young families and renters and youth. Those are great comments. And I will also just say these kind of climate friendly area conversations, I can see the name of that evolving a little bit as we get closer to what those are. But our intention is that those are events that are in different parts of the city, talking about some of the values around climate friendly areas, right? Around access to daily needs, around neighborhood centers, around walkable communities, and what that looks like in different parts of the city. So our intention is to do that outside of downtown, as well as probably at least one event downtown.
Great. I don't see any other hands up. I guess I have one last question, and then I want to kind of gauge the commission's thoughts on, moving this forward, or if there are any sticking points for any of you. I would like to know if this is sort of a work in progress, like this plan and whatnot. I mean, is there some flexibility as far as, hey, here's a great idea that we didn't think of, or anything else like that? I mean, I'm just kind of curious if there is some space to accommodate new ideas or feedback even during the process that might be helpful. And I just kind of thought I'd let you all speak to that.
Yeah, I would just say we left a lot of flexibility into this plan intentionally. One, we wanted this to be a plan that's easy to digest and approachable, and short in terms of its length and detail. And also to say, this is a 3-year project that encompasses a lot of different work, and we're going to be learning and adjusting along the way, and wanting to maintain a little bit of that flexibility to respond as we're hearing from the community, as we're hearing from you all. So your feedback and comments on how we can actually like take this kind of work plan and strategy and actually go out and implement it is really helpful. Stuart also mentioned we're planning to do some kind of pre-engagement conversations, which will really help us to refine, I guess, to Commissioner Isaacson's point of like, what does success in our engagement look like? How can we specifically work with you and your organization and the folks that you serve or your networks, to kind of take this from a strategy and an approach to more of that like tactical implementation. So I don't know, Terry, what you would add, but I would say we're definitely open to kind of learning as we go through this process and having that flexibility.
Yes. I would just say absolutely, we want that, and we want to know if you have ideas along the way or what you're hearing, because as the community involvement or citizen involvement, we want to rename you the Community Engagement Committee, but right now you're the Citizen Involvement Committee. You talk to a lot of people, and so we do want to know what you're hearing in the community, in your networks, and how this work is being received, or if it's understood, or all of that feedback that you get will be helpful to us to adapt it as we move forward.
Okay. Well, I think that maybe you all, staff, you could kind of chime in and say, I know we don't have a full commission tonight, but we do have a quorum. And so I'd be comfortable moving this forward, and I'd be open to a motion. I've got Commissioner Beeson's hand up. Go ahead, Ken. Oh.
Yeah, I did have one other thing before we do. I'm ready to do that also, by the way, ready to approve this and move it forward. I think it's one of your questions on what might be missing, and I'm going to be careful suggesting anything's missing. I don't know that it is. I actually went back and read goal 1 when you cited it in the material. So I got my deck repaired today after it was smashed in the ice storm. So I was feeling like I could sit down and kind of read something like that. One of the things that came out for me, I haven't really looked at that for a while, but it talks in there about in terms of citizen involvement and the state planning goals that, and I'm kind of asking a question of whether or not this plan should provide in a formal sense for feedback or responses to any comments or any input you receive. Sorry. And maybe that's the reporting system, but there are some, they talk in there about feedback, the idea that everybody who gives comment when you're taking public comment is that there is some sort of response or feedback given. Do you guys talk about that a bit?
Yeah, at a high level, I would say we tried to build out this timeline to provide some level of um, asking the community for feedback and response, going and doing our due diligence and work to kind of refine, and then coming back for that second round to say, here's what we heard, here's how it's reflected. Did we get it right? What, give us more of your feedback and response. So a lot of the engagement right now is kind of built in those two rounds in order to share with the public how their feedback was incorporated. So that's kind of out in a general sense. In the community engagement summaries, we'll certainly be doing that. Kind of here's what we heard, here's how we're responding to it or incorporating it. When it gets down to the individual by individual level, I think that gets a little tricky and kind of depends on what the mechanism is. And not having been at the city very long, maybe Terry or Alyssa could speak more broadly to that, but that's kind of how it's built into the plan right now.
Yeah, I agree with everything Leah just said. And also, by way of example, we've been using Engage Eugene for a few years now, and it has an ask a question feature that we might choose to use at certain points during the process. There's an FAQ function. There's a lot of different ways to ask questions and receive feedback from staff. So we do have some experience with the Engage Eugene tool. And we have, I would say, developed we try to get back to people as quickly as possible. And sometimes a response will be repeatedly given. The same feedback will be given to the city, and we have ways to answer that too, so that we're not getting stuck in a cycle of a comment that has been asked and answered, continuing to take a lot of staff time. I don't know if I'm being clear, but we do want to provide fair opportunity for public comments and make sure that we're keeping enough capacity to respond to input as it comes in and not belabor comments that come in that actually have been answered. So we're trying to
no, that makes sense.
Does that make sense?
No, it does. I think when I went through it, it seems kind of explicit, but I think in something as broad as this over the length of time it'll be, I think it's just the idea that, as people are participating in the process and giving their input, they can, and it's maybe been mentioned by some others here tonight, but the idea that they can kind of feel like they've been heard, and part of that is maybe something coming back. So the only other thing that kind of jumps out of here is that there's evaluation done. Or there's sort of like a loop. So we do a community engagement plan, and it goes through our work over a period of time, and then there is some sort of evaluation done. So I'll just leave those things at that, and you can. I think you normally do that, and I think you probably have that incorporated in there somewhere, but those are my comments.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts from commissioners before? Oh, sorry. I see your hand, Commissioner Fragala.
Yeah, I'm ready to make a motion if we can get that slide back up there. I think this is a great plan, and I can see staff is really engaged in some of the feedback that we've given. So I move that the Eugene Planning Commission approve the Urban Growth Strategies Community Engagement Plan as included as attachment A to the February 13th, 2024 agenda item summary.
Great.
I'll second it.
Okay. So moved by Commissioner Fragala, seconded by Commissioner Beeson. Any more discussion? I don't see any hands. Okay, with that, I will ask for the vote. So all of those in favor of Commissioner Fragala's motion, you can go ahead and raise your hand, virtual or otherwise. I think I see all 4 hands. So it is unanimous. Okay, nice work, everybody. Nice work, especially to all of you who put all of this together. This is incredible work. So thank you. I think I will then ask Alyssa if there is any items from staff before we.
Yep, I will. I'll rattle off a few dates like I usually do, but I have an email set up since so you don't have to write them down. But first, I thank you for your work on that. You all are always so thoughtful when it comes to the community engagement plans. And I know our staff put a lot of work into it. So it's always really rewarding to know that you have read their work and really thought about it and studied it and, thought about how it could be better or, what's missing. And so we really appreciate your work on that. So thank you. Your next meeting is February 27th, and that's going to be a fair housing training, and that will be completely virtual. We've given you March off, so there'll be no planning commission meetings in March. April, we had pulled for 2 dates since the other 2 dates fell on some holidays. So right now we have April 16th, although we don't have any agenda items. And then on April 30th, we are doing your retreat, finally. Hooray! We'll see. We may need to have another date for that as well because we may not have enough time to get through everything on the 30th. And then I also just want to mention that on May 15th, all of you are available for a joint work session with the City Council. So that will be awesome. And that's going to be an overview of the Urban Growth Strategies project. You guys probably you'll have the upper hand there since you've had today's presentation. You've got a lot more background on climate friendly than they do. And so, but that will be a great presentation as well. And then just some city council meetings of interest. I mentioned this last time, but the public hearing for mental housing remand is February 20th. Work session on the River Road, Santa Clara neighborhood action plan or neighborhood plan adoption package is February 21st. Mental housing, the possible action is on March 11th. And then the joint public hearing for River Road is March 12th. Again, I will send you emails on all of those, plus the remainder dates for May and June and I'm going to let you know this now that it's going to probably be a fairly light spring, early summer for the Planning Commission schedule. As you know, we are just kicking off one really large project and there's not a ton of stuff we have to bring to you. And most of our staff capacity is on that project. And we also haven't seen many appeals lately, which is good for us, honestly. But also means less work for you. So just enjoy the downtime. And believe me, we will have plenty for you to do. And also, I think staff will be reaching out to project resources as well for urban growth strategies and comprehensive plan and whatnot. So, Commissioner Beeson, did I just see your hand?
Yeah, I did. Go ahead, Ken. Have your hand up.
I do. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, that's okay. I'm actually done. So that's perfect.
All right. So I'll be brief. I wanted to advise my fellow commissioners. I'm planning to provide testimony to the council on the proposed code amendments that are part of the River Road Santa Clara plan. And I'll add that I will just, I'll be speaking on my own behalf, and I'm not going to be speaking on behalf of the commission or on behalf of any other commissioners, but I wanted to advise you of that. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner Beeson. Well, as you all know, I will be speaking on behalf of this body. I will be reading the letter that Terry and I have finalized, so I will be there too, but that I will be speaking for this group. So no surprise there. But I will be there as well. So, and can you all tell, is that going to be virtual or is that in person?
The council and board of commissioners public hearing on March 12th will be all virtual.
Okay. Just curious. Okay, thank you. Okay, any other items from commissioners or staff? I'll just open it up to anybody. Anyone?
Fabio, did you have a training to offer the commission?
Yes, thanks, Terry, and thanks, Commissioner, for your work on this issue. I work with the Office of Equity and Community Engagement, and we partner with planning staff on revising community engagement plans and also providing training. We have been working with our staff across the organization on a new approach to community engagement, which we say it's based on planning with instead of planning for. And we are very excited about the community engagement plan in the comprehensive plan, community engagement chapter in the comprehensive plan, because it is an opportunity for us to align some of this work. And you should expect to see more and more of this kind of flexible community engagement processes being presented to you. And as a way to get our boards and commissions to give them a chance to understand how the city is working on this front, we have been offering trainings to board and commission members. We have one coming up on March 21st. It is a training on our belonging curriculum. So if you have interest in understanding what we have been presenting to city staff and how we have been trying to also incorporate boards and commission members in our work, that is a great opportunity. So Alisa just mentioned that you have a light schedule for March. So here am I giving you some opportunities to get busier. So it's March 21st in the evening. We can share more details via email and give you an opportunity to enroll if you'd like to participate in the training on the belonging curriculum. We also have a training on design for equity, which is all on the planning methodology we are adopting for our staff, and you'd also be welcome to participate in those when they become available for community members in the future.
Great, thank you. Just looking at my calendar. All right. Well, is there anything else from anybody? I'm seeing a lot of no heads shaking. Okay. Going once. Going. All right. I will give you part of your evening back. We can adjourn early and look forward to seeing you all soon. So thank you so much, and we're adjourned.